Hello and welcome back to the channel. My name is Josh and we are here watching our history. Today continuing the series on the famous Paul Kruger, and we are continuing with the Triumvirate, the Transvaal Rebellion and the First Boer War. At Kruger's suggestion, Wolvaardt was elected Commandant General of the restored Republic. Though he had little military experience and protested, he was not suited to the position. The provisional government set up a temporary capital at Heidelberg, a strategically placed town on the main road from Natal, and sent a copy of the proclamation to Leon, along with a written demand that he surrender the government offices in Pretoria. Leon refused and mobilized the British garrison. Kruger took part in the First Boer War in a civilian capacity only, playing a diplomatic and political role with the aid of Jorrison and Bok. The first major clash, a successful Boer ambush, took place on the 20th of December 1880 at Bronkhorstspruit. By the turn of the year, the Transvaalers had all 6 British garrison outposts, including that in Pretoria, under siege. Colley assembled a field force in Natal, summoned reinforcements from India, and advanced towards the Transvaal. Wolvaardt moved about 2,000 Boers south to the Drakensberg and repulsed Colley at Laing's Neck on the 28th of January 1881. After Colley retreated to Skeinshoogte near Ingongo, he was attacked by Wolvaardt's second-in-command Nicholas Smith on the 8th of February and again defeated. Understanding that they could not hold out against the might of the British Empire indefinitely, Kruger hoped for a solution at the earliest opportunity. The Triumvirate wrote to Colley on the 12th of February that they were prepared to submit to a royal commission. Colley liaised by telegraph with Gladstone's colonial secretary, Lord Kimberley, then wrote to Kruger on the 21st of February that if the Boers stopped fighting, he would cease hostilities and send commissioners for talks. Kruger received this letter on the 28th of February and readily accepted. But by now it was too late. Colley had been killed at the Battle of Majuba Hill the day before. Another decisive victory for the Boers under Smith. This progressive humiliation of the imperial forces in South Africa by a raging collection of farmers, to paraphrase Mankie's and the historian Ian Castle, stunned the Western world. Colley's death horrified Kruger, who feared it might jeopardize the peace process. His replies to Colley's letter was delivered to his successor, Sir Evelyn Wood, on the 7th of March 1881, a day after Wood and Wolvaardt had agreed to an 8-day truce. Kruger was outraged to learn of this armistice, which in his view gave the British opportunity to strengthen their forces. He expected a British attempt to avenge Majuba, which indeed Wood and others wanted, but Gladstone wanted peace, and Wood was instructed to proceed with talks. Negotiations began on the 16th of March. The British offered amnesty for the Boer leaders, a retrocession of the Transvaal under British suzerainty, and a British resident in Pretoria, and British control over foreign affairs. Kruger pressed on how the British intended to withdraw and what exactly suzerainty meant. Brunt arrived to mediate on the 20th of March, and the following day agreement was reached. The British committed to formally restore the Republic within 6 months. The final treaty was concluded on the 23rd of March 1881. The Pretoria Convention. Kruger presented the treaty to the Volksraad on the Triumvirate's behalf at Heidelberg on the 15th of April 1881. With a feeling of gratitude to our God of our fathers, he said, "Who has been near us in battle and danger? It is to me an unspeakable privilege to lay before you the treaty. I consider it my duty plainly to declare before you and the whole world that our respect for Her Majesty the Queen of England, for the government of Her Majesty, and for the English nation has never been greater than at this time, when we are enabled to show you a proof of England's noble and magnanimous love for right and justice. This statement was to be ignored by many writers, but Manfred Nathan, one of Creer's biographers, stresses it as one of his most notable utterances. Creer reaffirmed his faith in the Royal Commission of Wood, Sir Hercules Robinson, and the Cape Chiefs Justice Sir Henry de Villiers, who convened for the first time in Natal on the 30th of April, Brunt with them as an advisor. The commissioners held numerous sessions in Pretoria over the following months, with little input from Creer, who was bedridden with pneumonia. Creer was largely happy with the terms under which the Republic would regain its sovereignty, but 2 points offended him. The first of these was that the British would recognize them as the Transvaal Republic and not as the South African Republic, and the second was that it was still not clear to him what British suzerainty meant. The commission, in which de Villiers emerged as a dominant figure, defined it primarily as British purview under the Transvaal's external affairs. The final Pretoria Convention was signed on the 3rd of August 1881 by Wolvaardt, Pretorius and members of the Royal Commission. Creer was absent due to his illness, but he did attend the official retro session 5 days later in Church Square. Creer felt well enough to give only a short speech, after which Pretorius addressed the crowd and the Vierkleur was raised. By now, aged 56, Creer resolved that he could no longer travel constantly between Buchenhoutfontein and the capital, and in August 1881 he and Gesine moved to Church Street, Pretoria, from where he could easily walk to the government offices on Church Square. Also around this time, he shaved off his mustache and most of his facial hair, leaving the chin-strap beard he would keep thereafter. His and Gesine's permanent home on Church Street, and is now called Creer House, would be completed in 1884. A direct consequence of the end of British rule was an economic slump. The Transvaal government almost immediately found itself again at the verge of bankruptcy. The Triumvirate spent 2 months discussing the terms of the Pretoria Convention with the new Volksraad. "Approve it or go back to Laing's Neck," said Creer, before it was finally ratified on the 25th of October 1881. During this time, Creer introduced tax reforms, announced the Triumvirate's decision to grant industrial monopolies to raise money, and appoint the Reverend S. J. du Toit to be superintendent of education. To counteract the influx of uitlanders, the residency qualification to vote was raised from a year to 5 years. In July 1882, the Volksraad decided to elect a new president the following year. Wolvaardt and Creer emerged as candidates. Creer campaigned on the idea of an administration in which God's word would be my rule of conduct. As premier, he would prioritize agriculture, industry and education, revive Burghers Dalgoa Bay railway scheme, introduce an immigration policy that would prevent the Boer nationality from being stifled, and pursue a cordial stance towards Britain and obedient native races in their appointed districts. He defeated Wolvaardt by 3,431 votes to 1,171 and was inaugurated as president on the 9th of May 1883. As president, Third Deputation and London Convention. Creer became president soon after the discovery of gold near what was to become Barberton, which prompted a fresh influx of uitlander diggers. "This gold is still going to soak our country in blood," said Wolvaardt, a prediction he would come to repeat many times over the coming years. Wolvaardt remained Commandant-General under Creer and also became Vice President. A convoluted situation developed on the Transvaal's western frontier, where burghers had crossed the border defined by the Pretoria Convention and formed two new Boer republics, Stellaland and Goshen, on former Tswana territory in 1882. These states were tiny, but they occupied land of potentially huge importance, the main road from the Cape to Matabeleland and the African interior. Kruger and the Volksraad resolved to send yet another deputation to London to renegotiate the Pretoria Convention and settle the western border issue. The third deputation, comprising Kruger, Smith and Du Toit, with Ewald Esselin as secretary, left the Transvaal in August 1883 and sailed from Cape Town 2 months later. Kruger spent part of the voyage to Britain studying the English language and with a Bible printed in Dutch and English side by side. Talks with the new Colonel Secretary Lord Derby and Robinson progressed smoothly, apart from an incident when Kruger, thinking himself insulted, nearly punched Robinson. And on the 27th of February 1884, the London Convention, superseding that of Pretoria, was concluded. Britain ended its suzerainty, reduced the Transvaal national debt, and once again recognized the country as the South African Republic. The western border question remained unresolved, but Kruger still considered the convention a triumph. The deputation went on from London to mainland Europe, where according to Mainklies their reception was beyond all expectations. One banquet followed the other, the stand of a handful of Boers against the British Empire having caused a sensation. During a grand tour, Kruger met Willem III of Netherlands and his son Prince of Orange, Leopold II of Belgium, President Jules Grevy of France, Alfonso XII of Spain, Louis I of Portugal, and in Germany, Kaiser Wilhelm I and his Chancellor Otto von Bismarck. His public appearances were attended by tens of thousands. The deputation discussed the bilateral aspects of the proposed Dalgoa Bay Railway with the Portuguese, and in the Netherlands laid the groundwork for the Netherlands South African Railway Company, which would build and operate it. Kruger now held that burghers had been far ahead of his time. While reviving his predecessor's railway scheme, he also brought back the policy of importing officials from the Netherlands, in his view, a means to strengthen the Boer identity and keep the Transvaal Dutch. Wilhelm Johannes Leitz, a 24-year-old Dutchman, returned to South Africa with the deputation as the Republic's new state attorney. By late 1884, the scramble for Africa was well underway. Competition on the western frontier rose after Germany annexed Southwest Africa. At the behest of mining magnate and Cape MP Cecil Rhodes, Britain proclaimed a protectorate over Bechuanaland, including the Stellaland Goshen corridor. While Wolvaardt was in negotiations with Rhodes, Du Toit had Kruger proclaimed Transvaal protection over the corridor on the 18th of September 1884. Wolvaardt was outraged, as was Kruger, when on the 3rd of October Du Toit unilaterally hoisted the Vierkleur in Goshen. Realizing the implications of this, it clearly violated the London Convention. Kruger had the flag stricken immediately and retracted his proclamation of 18th of September, meeting Rhodes personally in late January 1885. Kruger insisted the flag incident had taken place without his consent and conceded the corridor to the British. Gold Rush, Burghers and Uitlanders. In July 1886, the Australian prospector reported to the Transvaal government his discovery of an unprecedented gold reef between Pretoria and Heidelberg. The South African Republic's formal proclamation of this 2 months later prompted the Witwatersrand Gold Rush and founding of Johannesburg, which within a few years was the largest city in southern Africa, populated almost entirely by uitlanders. The economic landscape of the region was transformed overnight. the South African Republic went from the verge of bankruptcy in 1886 to the fiscal output equal to that of the Cape's colonies in the following year. The British became anxious to link Johannesburg to the Cape and Natal by rail, but Kruger thought this might have undesirable geopolitical and economic implications if done prematurely, and gave the Delagoa Bay line first priority. The president was by this time widely nicknamed Oom Paul or Uncle Paul, both among the Boers and the Uitlanders, who variously used it out of affection or contempt. He was perceived by some as a despot after he compromised the independence of the Republic's judiciary to help his friend Alois Hugo Nelmapius, who had been found guilty of embezzlement. Kruger rejected the court's judgment and granted Nelmapius a full pardon, an act Nathan calls completely indefensible. Kruger defeated Joubert again in the 1888 election by 4,483 votes to 834 and was sworn in for the second time in May. Nicolaas Smit was elected vice president and Leyds was promoted to state secretary. Much of Kruger's efforts over the next year were dedicated to attempts to acquire the sea outlet for the South African Republic. In July, Pieter Grobler, who had just negotiated a treaty with King Lobengula of Matabeleland, was killed by Ngwata warriors on his way home. Kruger alleged that this was the work of Cecil Rhodes and his clique. Kruger despised Rhodes, considering him corrupt and immoral. In his memoirs, he called him Capital Incarnate and the Curse of South Africa. According to the editor of Kruger's memoirs, Rhodes attempted to win him as an ally, suggesting that we simply take Delagoa Bay from Portugal, and Kruger was appalled. Failing to make headway in talks with the Portuguese, Kruger switched his attention to Cozy Bay, next to Swaziland, in late 1888. In early 1889, Kruger and the new Orange Free State President, Francis William Rates, enacted a common defence pact and a customs treaty waiving most import duties. The same year, the Volksraad passed constitutional revisions to remove the Nederduits Hervormde Kerk's official status, opened the legislature to members of other denominations, and to make all churches sovereign in their own spheres. Kruger proposed to end the lack of higher education in the Boer republics by forming a university in Pretoria. Enthusiastic support emerged for this, but the Free University of Amsterdam expressed strong opposition, not wishing to lose the Afrikaner element of its student body. No university was built. Kruger was obsessed with the South African Republic's independence, the retention of which he perceived as under threat if the Transvaal became too British in character. The Uitlanders created an acute predicament in his mind. Taxation on their mining provided almost all of the Republic's revenues, but they had very limited civic representation and almost no say in the running of the country. Though the English language was dominant in the mining areas, only Dutch remained official. Kruger expressed his great satisfaction at the new arrivals' industry and respect for their state laws, but surmised that giving them full burgher rights might cause the Boers to be swamped by sheer weight in numbers, with the probable result of absorption into the British sphere. Agonizing now how he could meet the wishes of the new population for representation without injuring the Republic or prejudicing the interests of other older burghers. He thought he solved the problem in 1889 when he tabled a second Volksraad, in which the Uitlanders would have certain matters devolved to them. Most deemed this inadequate, and even Kruger's own supporters were unenthusiastic. Rhodes and other British figures often contended that there were more Uitlanders in the Transvaal than Boers. Kruger's administration recorded twice as many Transvaalers as Uitlanders, but acknowledged that there were more uitlanders than enfranchised burghers. According to the British Liberal politician James Bryce, most uitlanders saw the country as virtually English and perceived something unreasonable or even grotesque in the control of a small body of persons whom they deemed in every way their inferiors. On the 4th of March 1890, when Kruger visited Johannesburg, men sang British patriotic songs, tore down and trampled on the Vierkleur at the city's Landrost's office, and rioted outside the house where the president was staying. One of the agitators accused him of treating the uitlanders with contempt. Kruger retorted, "I have no contempt for the new population, only for people like yourself." The riot was broken up by police, and the Chamber of Mines issued an apology, which Kruger accepted, saying only a few of the uitlanders had taken part. Few Boers were conciliatory as Kruger. Mentjies marks this as the point where the rift between the Transvaalers and the uitlanders began. I want to thank you for watching. It is just getting even more exciting. If you're liking the content that we're putting out, if you like the history of South Africa, the history of Paul Kruger, hit the like button and be sure to subscribe and hit the notification bell so that YouTube can let you know as soon as we release a new video. Have a great day and thank you for watching. Stay safe and stay strong.